Good evening, everyone. My name is Melissa Donahoe. I'm running in Group 38 for a Circuit Court Judge. I'll tell you a little bit about myself first because it makes me the person that I am today. I have been practicing for 26 years, so I'm the longest practicing lawyer in this race. I was raised by a single mother. We were on food stamps, and I went to Head Start, and I worked my way through law school, through college, cutting hair, cleaning motel rooms, and just working really hard to get where I am. So I'm a girl with a lot of grit. So what I do today is I am Chief Assistant Regional Counsel. I run what's called the Conflict Office in Broward County. So we do all the same work that the public defender does if they can't take the case if there's a conflict, so we do criminal defense. And we're also the front line for dependency cases, and those are cases where we represent the families whose children have been taken away by the state because of abuse, abandonment, or neglect, and we work to get those families back together. We also, in the civil part of our office, do Marchman Act cases, adult guardianship cases, and court monitor cases. So, as my role in this job, I have learned a lot in management. I also, by the way, keep a small caseload of murder cases. I'm the only death penalty qualified lawyer in this race. I've tried death penalty trials, and I've argued before the Florida Supreme Court on behalf of defendants in death penalty cases. So that's who I am a little bit, and that's my experience a little bit, and I hope to get your support. Melissa Donahoe. Thank you.
And the next one to bring it down is Stephanie Moon.
That music is fantastic. Good evening, everyone. I am Stephanie Camille Moon, a candidate for Circuit Court Judge in Group 38. I am a fifth-generation native, so my roots run deep in the South Florida community. I was raised by my mother and my grandmother in a pretty strict disciplinarian home. So you moms and dads who know about wrapping the knuckles with a ruler, that was my experience. I watched my mom work 2 and 3 jobs to provide for my brothers and I. But no matter any obstacle we ever faced, education was always the priority. In fact, my mom and I graduated from college in the very same year. She stayed here to raise my 2 younger brothers, and I went on to law school. I returned here 22 years ago to practice law. I began my legal career as a criminal prosecutor on the local, state, and federal level. Then I went into civil practice, and about 7 years ago, I opened my own law firm. I very quickly learned that sometimes if you want a seat at the table, it has to be your own table. I handle business litigation with a focus on labor and employment and white-collar criminal defense work in both state and federal court. Married to the love of my life, my husband Douglas. We've been married for 16 years. We have 1 daughter, Devin, who's 14 years old. I've worked for many nonprofits in our community, so my commitment is long-standing. It didn't just start when I decided to run for judge. Stephanie Camille Moon, Circuit Court Judge, Group 38, once in a blue moon.
And next contender is Jason Rosner. Come on down.
Good evening, everyone. As the next contestant, I'll introduce myself as Jason Allen Rosner. I'm running for Circuit Court Judge in Group 38. I'm married, live with my wife and 2 children in Hollywood. For the past 14 years, I've been a trial attorney here in Broward County. I've had my own practice where I practice criminal, family, and civil. But that's not what makes me the best choice in this particular race. What makes me different, what sets me apart, is the fact that I've been presiding over cases in this county for the past 6 years. At the request of the Chief Judge 6 years ago, I was appointed as a traffic hearing officer. So that means that if you got a traffic ticket in this county, there was a decent chance that I was the person who presided over the case if you took it to court. So if your ticket was, you were found guilty or you had to pay some money, understand as a traffic hearing officer or a judge, you're obligated to follow the law, you can't cut brakes. But if your ticket was dismissed, just remember Jason Allen Rosner was the person who dismissed that ticket. Some people say, traffic court, it's not that big of a deal. Why does that make you qualified to be a circuit court judge? The people who asked that question haven't sat in the seat that I sat as a hearing officer and looked at somebody in the face, told them they had to pay $150 or $200, and the response in some way or another is, that's my rent, it's electric, medicine. It's those types of things when you're interacting with people in the public that have prepared me to be a circuit court judge. But even if that's not enough, and the cases in traffic court are too small, on the other end of the spectrum, I've been a securities litigation arbitrator handling cases where there's sometimes millions of dollars at stake. So I've handled the small cases, I've handled the large cases. In the past 6 years, I've handled over 100,000 cases as presiding hearing officer arbitrator in this county. That's why I'm asking for your vote. Jason Allen Rosner, Circuit Court Judge, Group 38.
And the fourth candidate, Linda Leali, will not. Will not be here tonight. Melissa, you've been a prosecutor, you've been a defense lawyer, you run a office that's kind of a shadow office for our office with lots of lawyers. You've been around. Tell me why you think Broward has a problem with having a bench that reflects the diversity of our community. In short, why do we only have 6 or 7 black judges when we have almost 100 judges? And the question that I'm trying to get to as a public defender, tell me how that impacts the people that you represent that come before that judge.
That's a good question. I don't exactly know why black judges aren't representative on the bench. I mean, it's probably a combination of appointments by the governor, and then the election process as well. But I will say this, which is an interesting statistic. So institutional racism runs very deep, and there have been numerous studies, one done by the Tampa Bay Times a couple of years ago, outlining how judges treat the people before them. And there, unfortunately, doesn't seem to be a correlation between black judges and the way they treat people before them, in the sense that there's still institutional racism even in those judges. So it's more about, we should always reflect diversity, we should have more. But diversity comes in many forms. And your experience and what you can bring forth is what's important. But I do agree with the fact that we should have more diversity as long as we're having equality along with it, if that can answer the question.
Thank you. Stephanie, you've worn many hats in the legal world, and some very high-ranking prosecutorial hats as well. My question to you, because I hear this from the parents of many of my clients, that they cannot believe that they have to have the talk with their kids. By that, I don't mean the birds and the bees. I mean when black parents have to sit down with their black teenagers and tell them what they need to do when they interact with law enforcement because they're scared to death that their sons are going to be shot. Tell me about that. Is that something you've had to deal with it? And tell me what we need to do so that parents don't have to tell their kids that cops are going to shoot them.
I have received the talk. I have given the talk. I have been aggressively questioned by law enforcement. I have conducted myself differently when stopped by law enforcement because my child was in the car and I wanted to make sure we both got home safely. Quite frankly, it doesn't seem to matter your socioeconomic level, where you are, what law enforcement you deal with. I don't know how you can disarm when law enforcement sees the color of your skin as the weapon. That's what I live, that's what my brothers live, that's what my 14-year-old daughter lives. It's not going to change until we first have an honest discussion about racism and its foundations. And until people come to understand that it really is just the color of your skin. Nothing else is different about us. Nothing.
All right, Jason, you changed your name so that you could rise up on the ballot box according to a lawsuit that your opponent filed against you. You won the lawsuit, so clearly you're legally right. But my question to you is, tell me why people shouldn't walk away and say, he's a game player.
It's a simple thing, Howard, and it's based upon the fact that people in the community know who I am, know me for the past 14 years in the legal community. You yourself know me. The name issue is something that I saw for myself as a hindrance, being my last name, given last name, born last name is Rosner. And there's a belief that being higher on the ballot gives you an advantage. Historically, women have been able to use either their maiden name or their married name, or whatever it may be, as a way to manipulate the ballot to better place themselves for an election. And elections are not games, and in no way am I saying that, but an election is much different than an appointed position. An election, in a county-wide election, things make a difference, and if it gains an advantage by moving up in the ballot, then I was willing to do that, and that's what I did. I followed the law. The court said I was right in what I did as far as legally. And so I have no issues with it. My wife has no issues with it. My mother has no issues with it. My grandmother has no issue with it. And if they don't, then I don't either. If it helps them become a judge, that's what they want to see. That's what the county deserves. And they shouldn't just automatically dismiss it based upon the fact that a lot of people in this county don't look at the votes, and that's who they're voting for. And if there's a way to get those votes and become a judge, that's what I was going to do, and that's what I did.
Thanks, Jason. Okay, second question for you guys. Melissa, you have been a prosecutor, defense lawyer. You run a large public defender office. Broward County has been notorious and infamous for judicial misbehavior, for a lack of a work ethic, which results in people having to wait, sometimes in jail, sometimes to get into a house. My question to you is, in all of your roles, have you ever been able to do anything to address judicial misbehavior, and what have you done?
I'm trying to think. You know, as lawyers, when we stand up before the judges, there's this, ethical rules we have to follow and the respect we have to show the courts. So I can only say what I've done is to push back against those courts, to pepper judges with motions, to request hearings, to put them in positions where I want them to answer me or move more quickly. It's like about not giving up. It's about trying to get what you need to get done. And doing it, though, professionally and respectfully and ethically, but constantly pushing to get what you need to get done. I've done that in cases in which I felt that I was mistreated, or in cases in which I felt the judges weren't working hard enough or weren't reading my pleadings, and I'll file motions, just pushing them to get busy and to read what I wrote and to set me a hearing. And that's what I think I have done, and I have learned through that, well, not only through that, but I've always worked hard. I grew up working hard, so there's never going to be an issue with me, that's for sure. I'm a hardworking girl. Thank you.
Stephanie, you talked very eloquently about the talk. My next question to you is, what actions, if any, have you taken to change law enforcement and how they act?
Well, interestingly enough, as a baby prosecutor, within the first year at the state attorney's office, I was shopping in Bloomingdale's and was stopped by a security officer and asked if, as a good citizen, would I allow him to search my bag. And I said, if I were such a good citizen, would you be asking to search my bag? And then I proceeded to ask him if he had a reasonable suspicion that I had committed any crime, to which he was then taken aback. Interestingly enough, 1 week to the day, he walked into my courtroom. And he was there to prosecute a petty theft in Bloomingdale's. He asked everyone in the courtroom, who was Stephanie Logan, who was my maiden name at the time. And finally, when he got to me and he told me his name and why he was there, as I raised my head and looked up and our eyes met, the red came up on his face. And so I asked him what case he was there for, and he told me, and I told him, feel free to get your parking ticket punched because that case has been dismissed.
That's fire.
All right, Jason, you've been a lawyer for a lot of years. Many people are not aware that in Broward County, the #1 provider of mental health services is the Broward County Jail. My question to you is, what do we do about the mentally ill who can't get treatment, and the treatment seems to be criminal prosecution?
You want me to solve all the problems in this 90 seconds?
Yes, I'll give you an extra 60 seconds.
No, I'm good, but I'm not that good. I mean, obviously the reason for the question is because it's a tough question. How can we fix the mental health system in dealing with the criminal aspects of it? Because, on one end of the spectrum, you have the public who has the right to not deal with criminal behavior, whether it's, crime against a person. I'm not referring to the drug crimes, but crimes against a person. If that person's mentally ill, you still have a victim out there who has to deal with what happened. And to tell that victim, listen, I know you got stabbed, but this person has mental health issues, so we're going to do what we have to do and let him out of jail and give him some treatment. You still have that victim to explain to them and how they're going to deal with things. But on the other end of the spectrum, as a former public defender, I've dealt with those issues, and I continue to be a special public defender where I have mental health issues come up. It's a fine line. I mean, you have that fine line where you also have that person's rights. I mean, you have to deal with the mental aspects of crime. And does that person fully understand what they do? And that's why we have the evaluation system. That's what we have. Do I have a definitive answer? No. I mean, I'm not trying to tap dance around it, but if I had a more definitive answer, I might not be running for judge, I might be running for a different position to get the legislature to change the laws and make things better. I really don't have a definitive answer. I understand that there's strong pulls on both sides. All I can say is that, being that, especially with your office and with Melissa's office, you guys represent, I'm going to guess, 90%, probably, 90% higher of the criminal defendants, and then even a larger percentage of the mental health stuff because of their indigency. You guys, your attorneys, as a former public defender, those are the people that really can lead the way if they get on it, and you've done a great job.
Well, thanks, but we've led the way into darkness. But thank you. These are your impressive candidates for this race.